team sucks. The hell's your name? Ray-Bans. Come here. All right, Stevie Wonder, what's your superpower?
Shoot laser eyes out of my eyes.
That's the stupidest superpower I've ever heard. You're not on the team. I'm kidding, you're on the team. You're not on the team. Get back over there and sit down.
I was kind of cracking up because usually I feel like, but like when we first started the show, it's really funny to think of how hard we struggled to be like, what are we doing? What are you up to? And well, I'm watching an episode of this, listen to a little of that. Now I'm like, I have too much stuff. It could be a whole episode. I guess I'll save the one culture thing because it's part of our comic discussion. But I finished Invincible Iron Man. The full stretch
arc?
of it, yeah.
Dang, dude. How long is that?
That's a good amount of pages. I don't know exactly. Probably a couple hundred, I think. But yeah, so that the finishing that will kind of give background to my thoughts on comics and superhero comics and stuff like that. I had an epiphany this week that it clicked. I finally understand how social media can be fun. And
boom,
Twitter, it's weird. So I have have not been shy about saying this. I have a huge thing against Facebook and platforms and usually like Instagram too, just because the way people usually use Instagram is it's like, no, I'm going to take selfies and I'm going to do all this stuff that just, shows off how fancy I look and things like that. But I've never been about that. So I'm just like, I need to not be on these things because I'll just get mad at how people are so obsessed with themselves. Mm-hmm. So Facebook was like that, except it was more opinion based, and that just drove me nuts. And Instagram, I always looked at as like, it's just superficial. That's going to drive me nuts. And then Twitter, I was like, that's the ultimate granddaddy of just stupidity constantly flying around the internet. But I have been excitedly proven wrong. It has been a blast. And I think it's because even with being on Instagram, I've completely avoided following people that are more opinion based, or from what I've heard are more opinion based. And it's like, I follow other artists, I follow other creators, I follow other projects, I follow stuff that I actually want to engage with and get that interaction with, that it can be, another layer into the process versus just, hey, I went to Arby's today. So I've had a ton of fun. I think there's a couple awesome things that happened this week. The first one was I saw a article on GameSpot about Zombieland 2 getting launched, and it was like an announcement. Mm-hmm. And I'm new to this whole thing, and I haven't been on social media in years. So I had that moment where I know I want to make a reference, and I want to do it in a funny way so people will like me, because that's what the whole point of this is. So what do I do? And I remember I love Zombieland. The first one was great, and one of the main jokes being that Woody Harrelson's character is always trying to find Twinkies. And so I just, simple text is like, bring on the Twinkies, I think it was. And there was a gif of Chris from Family Guy running on a treadmill with a plunger slapped to his head and a Twinkie hanging in front of him, and he's just running. And I got like 50 likes off that. So I was like, let's go.
How many followers do you have?
Like 10.
Dude, that's legit.
So it was just like random people. Not a single one was anyone who followed me. So I was like, that was pretty funny. So it was like a direct comment to the article. I got a couple retweets. So that was like, all right, I understand this now. Yeah. It's a little more fun.
You're a slave to the game.
So it was a much different experience than our Marvel pixel art game that we were talking about last week, where I was just like, are you freaking serious? Yeah. So that's been fun. And then I guess this is like a triple shout out because we've mentioned them a lot, but couple pieces. One, the patrons, the comic that we've been talking about, they hit their second stretch goal, right? 35,000.
Yeah,
I think was their second stretch goal. So congrats to them. I'm super stoked because I know that means cooler stuff for us. Yeah, that's got to be super encouraging for them. Just knowing that there's all these people that are willing to be invested. Just the art and stuff looks awesome. Like I was just going through their page again today, and just it's gonna be dope.
Yeah, every time
really
I look at it, I'm like,
Yeah,
I made the right decision.
And I was looking at the list. I was like, I'm definitely glad I chipped in the 50 because I was like, bro, I'm getting so much cool stuff.
Yeah, I upped to the
dope.
Well, they made a noir light option, which was $40, and it doesn't include the bigger poster.
Sure.
Because I don't really want that bigger poster anyway.
Sure.
So I upped it to 40 from 25, and I tweeted at them, and then they retweeted me and said like something like "We love you" or something. And
much love.
Yeah.
So it was fun getting to engage with the guys who are making that. We're super excited about it, and I can just imagine how jazzed they are.
Oh yeah,
after this week.
Because I think they added a stretch goal of 40K now.
Yeah.
Which I don't remember what it gets, but
I haven't even checked, but yeah, I mean, dude, if they can pull that together in a week, that'd be freaking awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so shout out to the patrons and the guys working on that. You can find them on Twitter as well with updates. They're still on Kickstarter. I think it ends Friday. So
Thursday or Friday, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're at all interested in comics and especially supporting a comic that is indie developed and written and made by I think like 2 or 3. I think on the group it's like 4 guys, I want to say total, something like that. Like one guy's the main writer, I think. One guy's the main artist, and then they might have helped with like the business and other.
They might have somebody who does lettering and stuff too.
Yeah,
because sometimes people split
all that
that
stuff. So yeah, so if you want to support them, and they have options everywhere from like $10 to like a couple thousand. If I had the 1,000, I'd love to be a character in a book. That'd be dope, but I don't. So, but yeah, so it's like $10. You get like a digital copy. If you go like 20, 25, I think you can get a physical copy of it, and
you can get like a couple variants and stuff.
Yeah, it comes with some other really dope
posters,
art. And I love that main one with like it's like the main guy with he's in like black and it's gray background with the gun. It's got like the purple highlights and stuff like that.
It looks dope.
I was like, yup, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I like. So yeah, so shout out to the patrons. Good on you guys, and we appreciate the email shout out. I didn't know we would get ever considered.
Yeah, we got a little shout out in their update email.
Yeah, it was like, what is it, in the media or the news?
Yeah, they called us media. I was like, all right,
let's go.
We're official.
We've officially made it.
Yep, we made it.
We're in the media. So yeah, so that was super awesome. So it's been a blast, just kind of goofing around on Twitter and just like getting excited. I think it was really fun to just kind of do to another level what I feel like we said a couple weeks ago when we brought out the stupid to the bringing pop culture to the pit thing, and we were just kind of talking about our main goal is like it's been fun to just get excited with other people about stuff, and I think it's gotten me more excited to just experience things and even want to create my own stuff, because if there are this many people out there who are just interested in what other people are doing, I think it's super cool that there are people just that are like us that are just excited to be excited about stuff.
Exactly.
And it's made the day-to-day a lot more fun in that specific element, just engaging with pop culture. And it's like, okay, not everyone's a raving lunatic and toxic and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But so that's been awesome. And then my last 2 things, I'll leave out the Canada story. That was just one of those things I saw on there that I was like, I was
like, what in the world?
I saw it on Kotaku and I was just like, what is this world coming to? If you want a funny story that's horribly disgusting, but just like a look into what our world has become, it's Tim Hortons restaurant in Canada. Some lady who I think has been known to be kind of kooky asked to use the bathroom, and because she's a regular, the hostess said like, no, like you can't. So she the lady who came in took it upon herself to leave a steaming deuce on the ground right in front of the hostess and then try and throw it at the hostess.
Why didn't they let her use the bathroom?
I think because she had been a regular and not in a good way, that she had been there and been just, I don't know.
Okay.
There was like
so
some
she was a regular,
news,
but not in like a, what's up? How's it going?
Yeah,
Bill?
it's not like, hey, this is Jenny. Jenny, how's it going? It's like, oh, frick, it's crazy
frick,
Jenny. Like an ex-girlfriend or something.
Put on your masks.
Also,
Splash gear.
I just missed your probably unintended pun, but she was a regular.
Wait, I don't even get that.
Bowel movement.
Oh gosh.
She was irregular that day.
Irregular.
She was a little too much. But yeah, I just couldn't believe that. I read that story on Kotaku and I was like, are you freaking kidding me?
That's something.
Idiot.
When I read that at work, I was like, what the heck?
What? And then I Googled it just to find out more, and that's when I got the background of, this lady who had just kind of had a reputation of being not a good customer. And then I was like, so that happens.
Remind me never to go to Canada.
Never going to Canada. Yeah, learn it free. No. It's like everyone's like, oh, let's move to Canada. They're throwing poop at you, dude.
They're throwing poop everywhere.
Literally. We talk about mudslinging here. Like, I'd rather get hit with mud. You serious?
That's hilarious.
No, not you, Siri. Jeez, every time. I swear.
Siri's annoying.
Other shout out, comic related. So there's I don't know who's making it, but there's an Assassin's Creed comic coming out. I think in August. The first issue is slated to drop, and it's Assassin's Creed Conspiracies, and it's based in World War II.
Ooh.
And it's like the main guy finds out that was embarrassing. Pick that up in shame.
Don't hit that Mountain Dew.
Yeah. Splash it all over a work computer. That'd be great.
Like, sorry, Gloria.
It's like, sorry, I destroyed all your
Josh
work
spilled my Mountain Dew on your computer.
Oh, no.
I'm going to move this to the right side.
It's not a bad idea.
But yeah, that comic looks dope.
Yeah, and from the narrative the overview that they're keeping it really hush-hush, which I think is a good idea, but the general overview was that one of the guys who's in the Creed, or in the Brotherhood, he finds out that the Templars are trying to launch a nuke, and then so he's trying to,
classic.
do this. So it's like classic.
Templars.
Yeah. But I was like, I would freaking love if that ever turned into an Assassin's Creed game. Like a third-person shooter.
What if it is like
type,
the next one, and it's
dude,
kind of like a
that
tie-in?
would. Oh my gosh,
Getting a
I would
little
lose
hype.
my mind. Like just the thought of having almost a third-person shooter style Assassin's Creed game. So I mean, you have all this stuff with the blades and things like that, and of course, I'm sure they wouldn't take those away. But just I can imagine having more mechanics around, not necessarily having to be accurate, but being able to do executions with like you have a sniper and you have to level up your ability,
Guns
and so you can
stuff.
hit. Yeah, so you can do
dope.
Almost like VAT style, but third person shoot. Oh, that would be. Woo! Don't get me started. And then the last thing is just the heartfelt of the week for me was Microsoft just developed. They didn't just develop, but they released.
They released.
What is it called? It's an adaptable
accessibility adaptable controller.
Yeah,
or something.
and so it's like a controller with all these different layouts and stuff that are designed for people with disabilities to be able to play games. And it was really cool. I watched the video that they had on Twitter where it was just showing like people with a whole range of different disabilities and how they were able to cater the game to play like really complex stuff, and so which is awesome. I think anytime that they can do that. So as much as I trash on Microsoft for the games, like good on you folks.
Good on you for doing that.
That's pretty cool.
That's cool.
So yeah, that's all I got. Oh, and then there's the other whatchamacallit. I didn't even read. Oh, that was just my stupid stories of the week. That wasn't even I've stolen Punisher. Love the
I was
show.
like, yeah, you didn't even get.
I was
your
like,
update
oh,
yet.
whoops, forgot about that. I started reading Faust. It's by Goethe.
I saw that.
German play. It's all very interesting. He makes a deal with the devil, and there's all these shenanigans. So I think it's somewhat. I don't know like what. I'm still kind of trying to figure that out because I think
what prompted you to read it.
I think it was actually Jordan Peterson. He was talking about it in a talk, and the way he premised it sounded really, really, really fascinating. And the summary he almost gave me in reading the little bit that I have, it's almost like an extreme retelling of the book of Job, but if instead of Job, staying faithful, he like made a deal with the devil. So
interesting.
So it was kind of that kind of synopsis, and that hooked me, and it's a very interesting read. So it's all rhyming based, and the prose is has like sonnet schemes and different rhyme schemes that it makes it very interesting to see. Also, that it's a 500-page book. I think it's also a play. I think it was technically a play.
Okay.
And just the mind of these people to write something like that long entirely in rhyme schemes and stuff like that is just nuts.
That's
so
nuts.
I think it's just kind of it's not to say it's going to be a quick read, but because of how it's written, it's pretty easy to chew through 30 pages in a half hour.
Nice.
So I was just kind of see what happens. I thought it'd be fun. And then Rage 2 I saw is coming out, and I think it looked like it was made by id, who are the folks who worked on Doom.
id and Avalanche.
Yeah, and so I watched the video. I'm assuming you saw the video trailer. Holy buckets.
Yeah, I was like, I when they released the first trailer, it was like live action, and it was just a bunch of punk looking dudes running around screaming, purple paint flying. I'm like, what is happening right now? This is like Mad Max mixed with like some 80s movie or something. And then like the gameplay trailer dropped, and I was like, okay, I'm buying this game.
Yeah, I was
like,
frick.
I think I'm gonna have to buy this game.
It looks banana. Just seeing some of the stuff where it looks like there's some different jumping abilities. They've got guns that are, just catastrophic. It's gonna be mayhem.
Yep.
It's gonna be a game solely for going.
Did you
bananas.
ever play the first one?
No, I always wanted to.
I might have to pick it up. I think it's like
interesting.
$5 on 360.
Yeah,
So.
I heard mixed reviews. There are people who absolutely loved it and thought it was dope. There are people who really liked the Mad Max vibe and just like some of the different stuff that was involved with the weapons, and it's like you're fighting more mutants, so it's kind of got a Fallout-ish type thing, but it's not as like nuclear, like modern day nuclear.
Yeah.
But I heard that just narratively it wasn't very engaging, so there wasn't a lot of incentive to keep powering through it. But I mean, dude, this one looks gnarly.
And if it's by the people who made Doom, the shooting mechanics are going to be pretty bonkers. Yeah. And the music too, I bet they'll have a pretty dope soundtrack on there too.
I hope so.
I'm hoping for some like
just get Mick Gordon back
tracks on there and some dope stuff. So
yeah, that'd be rowdy.
Nice, dude.
Go for it.
That's everything you got?
Yeah.
I don't have too much. I finished a comic called Tokyo Ghost, which I thought was really good. It's kind of... A lot of people recommend it online on Reddit in a lot of like top 10 lists, but a lot of people also don't like it. I think it's because the author tends to be like pretty grandstandy with his message. Like you can tell what kind of message he's trying to get across. It's a very like anti-technology sort of thing. But I think for me, the aesthetic of the comic and the storytelling kind of overshadowed the in-your-face moral grandstanding, in my opinion. But I could see why somebody wouldn't like it if you are heavily leaned one way or another. Sure.
Just out of curiosity, because I feel like it's unfair to expect any writer to not infuse some of their personal, I don't want to say like belief, because that's too shallow, but agenda in a way.
Well, I think usually like a lot of comics have subtle, like not necessarily agendas infused in the story because of that. But this one is more so like, he's not being subtle with it. Like the story is built around like his opinion, or at least it seems to be built around his opinion that technology will ultimately destroy humanity and like nature is the only thing that is whatever.
Okay, so that's the grandstanding part, is it's not necessarily a warning of like one of those intriguing movies where it's like, oh, are we going a little too far with the technology thing? It's like,
I think it's like it's basically like making a statement rather than like presenting a scenario and letting you draw conclusions.
Like maybe we should be thinking about this deeper.
So it feels more just like a punch in the gut rather than like opening your mind to ideas. So I could see where somebody would be kind of just like, this is a little too much. But I think just like the cyberpunk aesthetic was awesome to me. The story does get like towards like the 75% mark. It starts to just like ramp up really fast and then it ends. And a lot of people also don't like the ending just because it ends so quickly. Mm-hmm. But I think the overall aesthetic of the book is really cool and cyberpunk. And Sean Murphy did the art, which he also did the Punk Rock Jesus comic. And I really like his art style. It's like very like jagged edges and not like
I'm gonna have to check that out.
So
cool.
I thought it was good. Because it's cyberpunk, there's definitely a lot of like nudity and cursing and all that stuff. So if you don't like that kind of stuff, but I think overall like just the cyberpunkiness of it and like basically people in this universe can be like addicted to technology, like you can be addicted to drugs, and so like people inject themselves with like nano things and stuff. So it's basically a parallel between technology and drugs and how society is basically just a bunch of brainwashed morons who, and so.
Sounds like I wrote it.
Basically, like the reason I didn't have a problem with the grandstandiness of it is because I was kind of like on board, maybe not with the intensity of it.
Sure,
but like
there's a part that you actually kind of agree.
Yeah, because there's like businessmen in it who are basically like they'll have like monologues about like how we need to keep like we basically just give people what they want. We give them these. There's like basically crates with like emojis on them, and they like send them out to the people and like. Basically, like we give the people what they want, and like that pacifies them. So then we can decide for them what they want, like politically and stuff.
Sure.
So it's kind of like basically the author has decided how things are working, and then basically like writes a story based on that. So you could argue like things aren't that bad. It's a little bit too pessimistic, but I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think he does a lot with the world, and it's kind of cool.
Cool.
So, patrons I had on my list. There's also Hellboy the board game is another Kickstarter I'm supporting, and it just keeps blasting through stretch goal after stretch goal. I think they got like 1.1 million.
Holy cow!
Now.
Nice.
So
what's the style? Is it just turn-based type?
It's hard to describe. I'm not familiar with board games at all. I'm only buying it because it's Hellboy. But it's similar to like the Warhammer board games, I think, where it's like almost like role playing-y, and it comes with those little miniatures that you can paint.
Nice. That
I always see people talking about. So, and every time a stretch goal, they have like different miniatures of different things, and they just add it on to the pledge basically. So I'm gonna be getting a crap ton of little statues that I'm gonna have to paint someday.
I can imagine.
It looks really dope, and I'm super excited about it. So I wanted to give that a shout. That's pretty much all I've done this week. Mostly the things I've been doing are continuing to read the series I've already been talking about. So I figured I wouldn't keep belaboring the point.
No, it's all good.
So yeah,
dope.
That's it. Before we get into it, just a quick reminder to follow us on Twitter, like we talked about before.
And my handle changed because I'm trying to use my Instagram and my Twitter, my personal Twitter, simultaneously for like production networking stuff. Yeah. So I went
plan.
From
it gets confusing if you're using like four Twitter
exactly.
accounts.
I was like, I don't want.
Like I already showed.
I was like, I don't want to deal with that. So
yeah, mine is at I am Phil Sorensen.
Yep.
Josh's is at Josh K Creations.
Yep. I'm both Instagram and Twitter.
Oh, nice. You got Insta too.
Yep.
I might have to get that. Zach's is at C San Pellegrino.
I just can't.
That dude. And then our official actual podcast one is at Pop Culture Punks.
Yep.
So you can actually follow our podcast, and we'll jump into the pit with you. So.
Yep. So feel free to tweet us ideas for episodes. You can DM us if you want to add us and recommend anything, or if there's anything that you want to debate about, bring it to the Moshin zone.
Yeah. So
hashtag it.
That'd be fun.
Speaking
of Twitter fun, I had some fun chats with the dudes from Imperius.
Yeah, shout out to those guys
on Twitter. Yeah, I was just like back and forth. There was one where he was like, he was talking about there's this giant comic they're reading right now or something, and he was complaining about how like just massive it is to read. He's like, we didn't plan for this at all. And then I was like, you just gotta do it, man. Sit down and crack open a couple cold ones. Then he's like, think of our livers. And I'm like, sometimes you just gotta, or it was like, everybody's got a burden they need to bear. Because that's like their thing is they drink beers while doing their videos.
Nice.
So shout out to Imperius Rex. Those guys are pretty cool. We might have to hang out with them.
We might
at some
collab,
point.
yeah. Hit them up with they'll have to learn me some comic knowledge because which we're just gonna jump into in a second.
Yeah.
But I've got some
comics. On that note,
dude,
just jump right into it.
Dude, I'm swan diving in.
You go with what you got, and then
I've got
bounce
all
off
right.
of that.
So I need to be clear. This is coming from someone who is not heavily ingrained in the superhero comic world. I jumped in hoping to just.
You jumped in like a month ago or so.
I did, yeah. I'm fresh. I'm a newbie, as new as it gets, and I get the concept of superheroes. I get the concept of comics. I understand all that, but there was something that just didn't quite sit right with me in terms of the storytelling, and I think this
specifically?
Yeah, and so
all of the comics you're reading, or just
I think specifically Invincible Iron Man, but okay. I've seen it pop up in Moon Knight and Spider-Man 2099 as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is all just me coming off the cuff too, so I might say
that's what
inflammatory stuff. Don't Twitter bomb me. I don't need that. I'm just talking. So what this is for?
No, and you should Twitter bomb him. Actually,
that would be kind of funny.
Permission.
That'd be kind of funny. Bring it to the pit, folks. Let's mosh. We moshing. So I do not like superhero comic stories. Or at least
what you've read so far.
At least what I've read so far. And I think the big thing for me is that there is there's almost like a laziness that I don't like, and it's not even laziness. It's how superhero stories are structured. Is there's so much. Iron Man is Tony Stark, and Tony Stark is who Tony Stark is.
Yeah.
He has his group of friends that he knows. Same thing with Thor, and then there's new Thor, and then there's Hulk, and there's all these set pieces, and there's these different. And I mean, I definitely understand now the criticism that people were having with Marvel and their launch of characters and how there's too many, because even for me, like there's something of me of I would almost rather personally I would rather read, if they were going to reboot something, act as if I have never read who this character is before, because there is so much reliance, what felt like there was so much reliance on me not even having other knowledge, because that's fine, like stories do that all the time, and some of it is necessary, some of it isn't, like whatever, that's kind of secondhand, but there was so much reliance specifically on other character cameos that really, like straight up just pissed me off. It was like, why is Doctor Doom showing up? Why is everyone like, you're Doctor Doom? The Doctor Doom? Like Victor Von Doom? Like the guy with, it's like, oh my gosh, we get it. Like, I kid you not, that happened 3 or 4 times in this Iron Man in the second, because there was like one portion with one art style and one narrative arc, and then the second portion was like different art style with a different narrative arc. The first one was pretty cool, and I think I was a little more forgiving of that one because I love the art a lot more. It was more like graphic art style versus the other one was like more painting realistic, and it was just kind of muddy, just like, But I could not believe how many times someone popped up and they just were like, this is just how this thing is, and this is this person, or like, you know, it was like this imbalance of information where you know who Mary Jane is, but then they're writing it to you like they're including her in the narrative as if you know her, but then they're writing it as if you don't know who she is. So same thing with like Doctor Doom, that was like the biggest one where he kind of pops in and out of the story. So like Doom pops up and you're like, oh, it's like, I'm Victor Von Doom, and you're like, oh, that's Von Doom. What is he going to be doing in this? But then they have like 4 panels of Tony Stark being like, I hate you. What are you doing here? Why are you bothering me? It's like, I don't know either, bro. Like, what's the whole point? And even just like the story itself was just like lackluster, and it bummed me out. There's just so much stuff where I wish, I don't know.
I'm wondering, like, because this is the only one you've read, like,
I totally know that's a big portion.
But Iron Man wise, I'm wondering if did you do research before you picked this one up, or did you just grab one that looked dope?
I did both. So
Okay.
I looked at a list, and granted, it was one site and one site's opinion, so I just kind of took it with a grain of salt. And I was at the point where I just wanted to give it a shot and try it. And if anything, it was a learning experience to know what I do like and just kind of ride with that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about comics is there's so much comics, so many writers and artists, and like everybody has their take on things. Like, you kind of just got to figure out what you like as you go.
And to me, it's not necessarily that they can't have their own take. Excuse me, that monster's coming back to bite. It's not that they can't have their own take, or that they can't even have similarities, but it's almost like I almost would rather them start, like, if there's a new writer, just start from scratch. Just rewrite everything. So they did introduce Riri Williams, who Zach mentioned a couple episodes ago when we were talking about this with the Miles Morales. And I actually really like who she could be as a character. Because she's this, very stubborn 15-year-old girl who just does not want to do school stuff. Got accepted in MIT's, just that's not for me. I don't like it. I want to fight bad guys and all this stuff. And Tony comes in and kind of briefly interacts with her for a couple pages. So to me, that could be really cool, knowing if you do use part of Tony Stark's character to like boot her into being, I think it's Ironheart, or I want to say it's Ironheart is what they do. Yeah, it's not like Iron Woman. They joke about that where they're like, well, what would you name me? It's like Iron Woman. They're like, come on. So
Can't think of anything better.
Yeah, she's like, are you serious? But who she's being built up to be, even in those couple panels, is she is just going to do whatever the heck she wants to do. And what she wants to do is she wants to beat the snot out of bad guys because I'm smart enough to make this giant robot armor that's based off of this guy who's 20 years older than me. If I can do that, I can do a lot of stuff, and I'm gonna do it. And so I love how, in a way, it's almost a young female Tony Stark and old Tony Stark and all the crap that he's going through, and then him having to come and just be like, all right, like, let's find out a healthy way to do this so you don't stuff doesn't go crazy for you. But that was like 5 pages, and then it's off to the next thing, and the next thing you know, I mean, spoiler for this comic, like, apparently Rhodey dies, and I kid you not, I like read through this portion, and then the issue ended, and I flipped to the next one, and it's like Stark Tower burned to the ground, and Tony's like sitting on the rubble pile. There's a whole bunch of people like, well, is Tony going crazy? I was like, what just happened? Like, just out of nowhere, it's like, oh, here we are, and Rhodey's dead, and there's all this stuff, and here's Tony going to an AA meeting, and like, what the heck just happened? And it was just like, who wrote this? Like, I don't know, not even that they thought that was a good story, but then what business person somewhere said this was the right way to go with this. It was like, I much would have rather them completely forget about the story arc that they just came out of, which was really short-lived and kind of like you said, really, really quick, and just focused on, building up Tony to then be teaching Riri to then become Ironheart and do that, because she could be an awesome character. And Tony, as it almost had a Marvel Batman Beyond vibe, where you have old Batman teaching this new kid to be Batman, and so you have this old crotchety guy behind the chair walking in through stuff and be like, you can't just do whatever you want. And then this young kid be like, yeah, well, then you can come out here. And he's like, haha, funny, I'm old, I can't do that. So they kind of had that built up, but I was honestly baffled at how downright poor the progression and the writing was. I was really like flustered because having gone through writing classes and stuff like that, I got this, the verbal snot beat out of me of like, this doesn't make any sense. This arc to here, that doesn't make any sense, and I can't follow this, and this information isn't clear. And that was for a class, and then yet you have a professional who's paid however much money to write. Is it
the same writer from one arc to the next?
I'm pretty sure it was.
Same writer. I'm wondering if did anything happen in between, like in a different series of comics?
Well, that's what I don't know. I don't think
like
so.
With Marvel, I think they get a lot of. I mean, DC too. DC reboots constantly, but I think Marvel gets a lot of flack because of how interconnected everything is, and like dependent certain comics are on like tons of other comics, which similar to the movies, I guess. And
so. there very well might have been, and so that might be part of my frustration is I just assumed, because from what I read, this was a like 1 through 12 stretch. I don't know if that's the exact end number, but it was like issues 1 through blank. And like that was the full stretch. But then it almost was because then they make it at the end of it, they make a mention to Civil War 2. And I was like, wait, so did I miss something? Like, did I completely not, get an,
did Civil War happen in between the two arcs?
That's what I'm wondering. Or like
second Civil
that
War?
comic I mentioned where Tony's sitting on this rubble pile, that I'm confident now, as you mention it, that's probably what happened. Is I
bet there's a whole arc of things that happen in between.
It was just infuriating of like, this is supposed to be the full collection of this series, and yet there's a huge chunk missing to the point where when I'm reading it, it just doesn't make sense. And even then, of it not making sense, it just like wasn't good. Like I literally got to the end of it, and to the last like maybe 15 pages, I didn't even read it. I just kind of flipped through to like see if there's anything that was like, am I missing something here? And I didn't care. Just lost.
See, I feel like you're running into the same problem I ran into when I started getting into comics. I kind of realized like a lot of superhero comics are heavily reliant on continuity and reliant on like rogues galleries and like enemies and like familiar faces, basically, because like, I mean, these creators don't own their characters. The publisher, Marvel, owns the characters. So, like, there's probably some sort of restrictions, and like, hey, you can't just reintroduce new people every time. You can't just reintroduce new bad guys, because like most of our fan base is coming back to these comics because of this continuity and stuff. I think comic book fans are intense about continuity. I'm not that deeply entrenched in it, but I think I ran into the same problem where like I think I read Civil War. I got the a couple months ago, I got the Marvel thing, the streaming thing, and even like just reading an arc like that, there's so much like stuff that goes into it. It's like it's a dope art and story and stuff, but it's just like I don't even know how to start keeping up with why all these people are here.
Yeah, it's
doing this
wildly
and stuff.
inaccessible.
Yeah,
and
so I think you should basically start over and
right.
and look like
Yeah.
seek out comics that are like praised for having good stories, and then because I think like a lot of superhero comics are basically just like, if we're going to divide between art and entertainment, a lot of them are more focused on like entertaining and like having cool fight scenes and maybe messing with like comic layout and panels and how they're depicting action, because that's a lot of what superhero comics are focused on. But there's also a lot of comics out there with like really dope stories, but usually it's not the main superhero ones.
Yeah,
so.
and like to me, this wasn't at all an experience of like, well, I'm just done with it, I can't take it. But I think it was eye opening because I feel like there is, in a weird way, the quality curtain. I feel like that's one of the things that seems daunting sometimes, looking at stuff that gets highly praised and stuff that's super popular and gets really big. And you know, these people who are professionals at doing some of this stuff, and that like they get paid big bucks, you know, to write comics like this. And you know, Lord knows I can't draw or do anything like that, so I just wouldn't be. But it felt like there was almost a pulling back of the quality curtain that was like, this really isn't that good.
Yeah,
you know,
and it could be like a Todd McFarlane situation, like, I could do better than this. I could write better than this.
Or even equivalent. It was one of those
things. I could
things,
write just as bad as this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love in that interview with.
Yeah.
Was it with Vice? It wasn't with Vice, was it?
It was Complex, I think.
Complex. That's right. I was like,
it was called Blueprint, I think the series was.
Yeah. And that was like one of my favorite things that he framed it was. He was like, I can draw this bad and I can write this bad.
Yeah.
So if they can draw and write this bad and get paid, I'm sure I could too.
Yeah.
And so there's part of me that was like, wow, maybe it is worth just really kind of hunkering down and giving some of this
I
stuff
think
a
that
shot.
for me is a lot of the motivating factor, because even a lot of the comics that are highly praised, I'm like, I mean, I can kind of think of better things than that. Can I write them? I have no idea. I've never tried, but like I can just imagine things being better than that. And so it is the curtain being pulled back of like, well, what are people in the comics industry considering good? And I think the threshold is different than like books and novels, and different like storytelling happens differently because of the difference of medium. So.
And to be very clear too, like that's not to downplay how much I did enjoy reading through the comic, and like, you know, like I said, the art was cool, and even though the second arc I didn't like the art as much, it's still amazing to see what these people can do, and just and
it's crazy
to see that full creation. Like, so in no way is it to say like, well, they suck and they shouldn't keep doing it and I'm better than they are, but it is very interesting. Like, I think that was a great way to phrase it, of thinking of like, there is a really big difference between, you know, like what people look back in literature and say are timeless classics, and to read it now and it's like, I don't get why this is considered good. It's kind of sucks, you know, but then people love it and they fawn over it. And then other stuff where, you know, how subjective it is really hard. But then I just think of all the times I had instructors who were just so adamant about these basic storytelling rules, or certain writers who are just, you have to do this and this. And then you get to these, you know, other people who don't do that, and they're like making hundreds of thousands of dollars with like a very subpar narrative story, you know. So it just is very confusing to, I think it's just more, if anything, it's just kind of confusing to me, like
just like a shock of
it's like, what's quality, what's not, you know, because someone might come in and read this book and be like, oh, this is amazing, and it's like, that's fine, that's
have
your
you read
opinion.
The Punisher yet?
No, I might pick that up next.
Hearing what your thought is on that, because I know Garth Ennis, I've seen some things by him where he doesn't like superheroes at all.
Yeah, he's very. That's what I read. I think in the opening thing is he was like, "I hate superheroes." I was like, "Let's go, Garth."
Yeah.
So
you,
like, that's ballsy,
it might be interesting to see how you think of his ability.
Definitely,
because I think he did Preacher, was another comic he did.
Oh, interesting.
Which is, I think there's a show on that right now. So
yeah,
he does a lot of non-superhero-y stuff, but
for sure. Yeah. So if there are any big comic fans out there who have really interesting arcs or collections specifically, I don't really at this point want to have to buy like 20 volume series of anything, but
It might be beneficial to get that Marvel streaming thing and just kind of flip through and see like.
yeah, I might do that.
Because then you can just try like read a couple issues and you're like, I'm not really following this. And that way you don't have to spend like $30 just to try something out.
Right.
So
yeah. So, but anyway, all that to say, I still am glad I finished it. I still am fascinated by who Tony Stark is and like what Iron Man is, and even the possibility of Riri Williams too. Like I do think she could be a really cool character, and I hope that I think this is the thing is, it wasn't bad. Let me retract some of this stuff. Now, this is all external processing. I'm such an external processor, and that isn't good on a podcast in a way, because it's like midway through, I'm like, oh, I'm changing my mind. It wasn't that the narrative was bad. It was just way too safe. And I think that is the vibe I'm getting from a lot of superhero comics or not a lot. The ones that I've been reading is it's not that they're like bad stories, but they're just very safe. They're not gonna make someone do something really stupid. They're not gonna put them in an actually life or death situation. They're not gonna do. Yeah. And actually, that I think of it, that did happen. Well, not even that they're PG-13, but that they're. I don't know. Like they're just not putting. They're not putting. So one of the best pieces of advice I got from a instructor at UW. I've mentioned it before, I think in our creative podcast, but Jordan Jacks, who also writes fiction, he's really good. Check him out. I think he has his own website with this stuff. But he would always poke at people's stories, and he would like underline like one sentence and be like, "This is really weird." And he's like, because this in the context, he's like, if you look at it and what you've written so far, it doesn't mean a lot. It's very inconsequential. But if you were to form your whole story around this one sentence that this one character says, that's a really weird thing to say, or that's a really weird thing to do. And he would always emphasize, like, play up the weirdness in stories. Like, people don't read stories to finish them or to just having said that they read it, but because they want to see like what happens, and they're intrigued by interesting and weird stuff. So if there's interesting and weird stuff in your story, he was like, full throttle, go for it, just play it up. And I feel like this was one of those stories where what I've gotten so far from reading 2099 and Invincible Iron Man, and even some of Moon Knight too. I think Moon Knight a little more so. I think I've enjoyed Moon Knight more because it's a little more dangerous with its storytelling and some of the stuff that allows to happen.
I think it might benefit from the fact that he's not a very popular superhero,
which
so they can mess around with him a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas Tony Stark, you kind of got to be safe because like people will get ticked off. Like people get ticked off enough when you change the gender of some superhero or the race or something. So like, imagine completely like doing something dumb. So
yeah, but anyway, so yeah, I in a way I just think that Marvel and other superhero comics need to play up. Just like play up the interesting and like weird stuff that's going on, and to not shy away from it, or not to just shrug it off as like, well, it's the Marvel universe, stuff happens, there's a god who flies around with a giant hammer and a guy who shoots about at his wrist. Like, play up the weirdness, be crazy, which sounds stupid because they're all kind of weird and crazy. But anyway, I have a very complex opinion right now. That'll probably change as I keep going.
Yeah, I think when as you start reading more, you'll probably shift and change. But you'll probably also find that there's a lot to be left wanting if you're just focusing on superheroes.
And I was reading, you could list a couple examples, and then we can go into our Deadpool 2 review.
I didn't really have a lot of thoughts on it. I think my only thought was that I do agree with you to some extent.
Sure.
I don't by any means, or I can't by any means say that I've read enough to solidify my opinion on superhero comics, but I think I read enough to at least make a decision to not spend all my time reading them.
Sure.
But I love Batman, and I found a ton of good Batman stories. Like, they're all the classics that you could find anywhere online, but The Killing Joke is really good because, like you said, like it takes something weird and it just like twists it hardcore. That one's messed up, but it's really good. The Long Halloween is another good one. It's like it's almost a detective story more than a Batman beat 'em up story, which I like the detective side of Batman. So that one's really good. The art's really cool too. Court and City of Owls were really good.
I definitely want to check those out.
I think
out.
That was definitely a case of them adding a new bad guy to Batman's gallery of bad guys. Dark Knight Returns and Batman Year One by Frank Miller are super good. Dark Knight Returns is basically came out at the same time as Watchmen, which is on my list as well. That I think you should read that one because I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But that one basically made Batman like darker and more brutal and stuff. It's pretty intense. And Old Man Logan, that's a good one. The movie Logan is kind of based off that. I think the comic is almost better. Has an almost better story. So yeah, those are most of my recommendations. Also, I just put Hellboy on here because it
shout it out.
He's not really like a superhero, but he kind of is. But like, I like the fact that his whole universe is all interconnected, and there's never been a reboot or anything. So like everything is consistent across the board. So,
so just to get some context too, just because I'm also curious. So what do you think narratively that these ones that you just listed did better than? Because I don't know what's the full breadth of like other superhero stories that you've read that would play into your knowledge base.
I mean, when I got into comics, I basically looked up like, because I knew that I wanted to get into Batman,
comics,
and I was like, well, what are the top 10 Batman stories or whatever? And then I kind of looked at a bunch of different lists, and I kind of read a little bit of context, like, ooh, that kind of sounds cool. Maybe I'll get that one. And I think it's interesting because a lot of the things that you said that you wanted to see in comics is what these comics did for their respective, like, I mean, it's all Batman, so like,
but that's interesting.
What these did for the Batman character, like, up until The Dark Knight Returns, like, comics were still bound by like the Comics Code Authority, so like they couldn't have a lot of the things that comics have now. Like, I don't even know the history behind that, but I just know that like Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns like basically created like the darkness in comics that came after.
Yeah.
Which now has kind of become derivative, and now everybody's like too dark almost. A lot of people complain about, but so it kind of shifted like the tone of Batman. And maybe nowadays it's kind of just like, oh, this is like everything else. But it's interesting historically seeing that. I think The Long Halloween is just an interesting mystery sort of thing, and it amplifies the detective side of Batman more so than a lot of Batman comics do, because people just like to see Batman beating people up. I like it. I like the inner monologue, like almost noir style Batman. I just liked Old Man Logan because I like Wolverine, just brutal. I think the interesting thing about that comic is in the movie, it's hard to explain without spoiling it.
Sure.
So, but I think his motivations in the comic are different. And in the comic, he's a pacifist, and he refuses to kill or fight ever again. And so, like, the tension is because of what, basically in the movie, what Xavier does in like the Logan movie,
right,
is what Wolverine does in the comic. Wolverine's the one who like basically slaughters all of the X-Men. So he like refuses to ever use his claws again. And so like the tension of the story is basically the most brutal superhero in the X-Men universe refuses to ever fight again. So I just think that's interesting, and it's post-apocalyptic. So like the Hulk has like this whole family of like hillbilly like cousins and stuff because of inbreeding, and like it's just it's goofy but it's goofy and fun. Like there's different like
play up the weirdness though.
Yeah, like, and I think all of these do that. Like they take the interesting weird parts about the character and they play that up rather than focusing on like who just making another story with this character with the whole bad guy thing. And Watchmen, I feel like
I might have to jump into that one next.
I can lend it to you because I have 2 copies now. So, but I feel like Watchmen, if you're tired of superheroes already, like I feel like Watchmen takes the superhero idea and basically flips on its head and says like superheroes aren't everything they're cracked up to be, and if superheroes were real, they would be probably messed up, terrible people putting costumes on for all of the wrong reasons, sort of thing. And then it plays it out in a Cold War era style thing. So it's old, it's from the 80s, but it's fascinating. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Those are all my thoughts.
That's the superheroes.
Cool.
But speaking of another superhero,
that boy
Deadpool 2.
That boy Deadpool.
Well, Deadpool, but the movie's Deadpool 2.
Oh man,
yeah,
that was
that Friday night.
Funny. Holy shnikes. All right. Also, to let it be known, I'll put a mark at minute 51. It's about to go down.
1 minute 51. Man, we haven't been doing this very long.
I know, it's been a long minute 51. Minute 51. Spoilers ahead, y'all.
So,
Bring
thoughts?
Dude, it was so funny.
Yeah.
It's
Like, thinking back on it, though, like, I can't even pick out, like, a joke that was funny because the entire movie was just, like...
a running joke.
A running
it was
joke.
Constantly.
Yeah, it's... Oh, gosh.
I wish I would have researched more. I completely forgot, but I had seen a couple articles posted, I think one specifically on GameSpot, where they were saying that critics were hating it, but fans were loving it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't speak to why critics didn't like it, but part of me is just like, what about it? Like, what did it not do for you that made it not good? I mean, if your preference, like, he's in a bloody, violent movie, like, you're an idiot for going to see it in the first place, or like that you signed up to be the one to review it. Because if you saw this one and didn't see the first one, I don't know what to do for you. Like, that you didn't do any kind of research to see, like, oh, Deadpool 2, it's the next superhero movie. I wonder if it's connected to Avengers. You know, it's just like, I guarantee you there were morons like that who were...
Definitely jokes about the Avengers in that movie.
Oh, and it was great. It was so funny.
Got a couple DC zingers.
I was waiting so hard for Deadpool at the end to just start fading away into dust.
Yeah, that would have been great.
Yeah, that would have been amazing. But no, just like, I feel like this is my exact sentiment from walking out of the first movie was, this is what a comedy should be. Like, this is what a comedy movie should be. And in a way, it was kind of what I was getting at with Hot Rod, is that it's just ludicrous. Everything is ludicrous, but there's enough reality in it that you can ground moments in it. But then 2 seconds later, it's like, oh, that's gone. There it goes. It's like, heartfelt moment. Oh, nope, there it goes. This guy just lost his head. Like, you know, and then he's making a joke about it. It was never serious. Like, it was never fully serious.
Yeah.
And I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. I feel like this one had a couple more moments where you're like, dang, they're really like...
They're trying.
They're
heavy.
driving the heaviness a little bit. But even then, in those moments, it like shifted so quickly back to like, oh yeah, this is a Deadpool.
Oh wait, yeah, it's Deadpool. Yeah,
this is Deadpool. He laughs off his pain.
Right. What is it when he's sitting in the bar and TJ Mills' character is like talking to him or whatever about, like, he's like, Vanessa's gone, man. You just gotta let. Are you peeing? He's just peeing on the movie. Like, no. And then the one guy said, like, I can't remember what the big biker dude's name next to him.
I don't remember.
But, you know, gives this whole deep monologue on life and how you live on. He's like, that's enough speaking lines for you, Butch. And then he like walks off. So it was so perfect. It was the self-referential comedy in itself being comedy. It played up Deadpool's character, which is, you know, all those weird, interesting tropes of him knowing the fourth wall, breaking it. None of the fourth wall breaks were like, I think this is what it was, is they masked Deadpool's comic quirks in the context of the movie, and they never broadcasted it in a way. Like, you didn't know when he was gonna, it wasn't one of those things where
there wasn't even a ton of, unless you count like extra universal like jokes, there wasn't a ton of like directly fourth wall breaking jokes in this one, I think. And like where he actually talked to us.
Right. But the ones that they did, I think, were masked in the midst of another moment that had nothing to do. So, perfect example, when they're in the ice box and he's talking to I forgot what the kid's, Russell or whatever. And they're looking and he's like, stay away from me, kid. And if you're gonna be best friends with anyone, you gotta be a best friend with the biggest guy in the prison. And he like looks down, he's like, as you know, with a huge dose of foreshadowing, you know, so things like that where it's in a moment and then you're listening and then all of a sudden you're like, I get it. But they never did that, like, here's a bunch of foreshadowing, there's a big guy in the basement, you know. So they it was all
melded
everything.
Like, it all felt like it fit within like the Deadpool character. And every time it happened, I was like, frick, man, you can just tell Ryan Reynolds had a blast. Like,
oh my gosh, yeah,
acting, and I'm sure he has a hand in writing a lot of this stuff too.
I thought he was one of the main writers.
Yeah, but you can just tell he's like just having fun. I'm like, man, this is the kind of movies that should be being made. Like,
Exactly.
people having fun doing crap.
Who like want to be doing it. Like you
Yeah.
can just everyone it was just so good.
Yeah. I think my favorite part, like looking at it in retrospect,
Sure.
because I had watched all the trailers, I had seen all the promo stuff.
Yeah.
None of that happened in the movie.
Yes.
Like they basically the whole first part of the movie was like setting up almost the movie that we thought was going to happen.
Yep.
And then
It was
I was like,
guess what?
wait, is Terry Crews really just gone now? I'm like, you're bringing him back, right?
Yeah.
I was so hyped for Terry Crews.
That had to be my favorite moment in the whole
Yeah.
movie is when he lands and he's looking up. He's like, "Oh, there they go," and they're all just spiraling. In the parachutes. And they all die except for Domino, which she was a great character. I love Domino.
I love like the whole exchange where she's like just floating down like towards the bus, and they're like talking on the radio. He's like, luck's not a superpower, and I don't believe that. And she's like, yeah, and whatever. And they're just like talking the whole time while she's like surviving all this like really cinematic crap.
She's like, I stole the bus. He's like, what?
yeah.
You kidding me? That was awesome.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how like the gnats they had to just completely. It was like, and then just him sitting there and being like, oh no, there he goes. No, he's dead. No, just one by one, and there they go.
I was really hoping Peter would also survive.
Yeah, but I also love at the end of the movie that they brought him back. He's like, no, Peter, no, just go, my sweet baby boy, just go.
He's like, all right, this one's getting kind of scary.
This is getting a little weird. I'm out of here. So I thought that was hilarious. I wrote down a couple of moments, but then one of my other favorite moments was at the end, like the 4 times he dies, and then he's just like sitting there. It's just so hard to go. It's just like,
yeah, they just focus on his face and you knew it was a little bit too long for them to be focusing. You're like, he's gonna come back. He's gonna come back. It's
he's
just
like,
so hard to go.
It's just so hard to go. But it was moments like that where he didn't like look at the camera and say it. The how they wrote it was just so perfect that it was like everyone you like. It just. I feel like
honest,
that's go for
sorry,
it.
No, you.
No.
Well,
I feel like I'm hijacked. Go.
No,
for
I was
it.
gonna say, to be honest, like because of the way they're promoting it and then the way that they shifted the movie completely, I legitimately thought they were gonna kill him at the end.
Part of me did too.
Because Ryan Reynolds has been saying like it doesn't really, unless something really big happens, like he doesn't see a need for a third one to be made.
Right.
And he thinks that X-Force will be like the next thing. And I was like, oh, well, maybe Deadpool won't be in the X-Force. Like they're like he wasn't lying when he said I'm gonna die in this one when he was talking to Wolverine.
Right.
And I was like, frick, they're gonna kill him off. But then I was like, no, they're making too many jokes about this. He's coming back.
Well, and then but then that's brilliant when you think about it, because then you're completely shifting your expectations.
Yeah, you're
so
like, wait,
it's like
he is gonna die. No, he's not gonna die. He is gonna frick.
But then like the meta joke of him being on the outside saying, "Oh well, X-Force is gonna be the new movie," and then as soon as they become X-Force, they're all dead.
Yeah.
So it was they just they played it so well. But I think the point I was gonna bring up earlier is it's not just superhero movies, but comedies specifically need to look at what this movie did.
Yeah.
And I think there was like no point of it where it felt telegraphed in a way. And I'm sure there's people who disagree with me, but there was a level of like, I'm watching this movie to just see what happens. Like, whereas I feel like because so many other comedies, it's a premise. It's not like the characters or it's not the situation, that it's like you can almost put a bet on, all right, they're going to make a joke about this, and then this thing is probably going to happen, and then there's like a couple ways they might take this, but here's like the 5. Oh, yeah. What? They went with number 3.
Well, and I think a lot of times too with comedies, like even if the movie itself isn't inherently predictable, because comedies tend to follow similar patterns, you can always call like what the next joke's going to be.
Right.
At least I find myself doing that. Like watching sitcoms now, it's just like I can call everything. Like I know what's going to happen because comedies have become so derivative of one another. So like you know the patterns. Whereas this movie was like, let's just take this dude. You have no idea what he's going to do. He might just chop some dude in 50 pieces with his swords, blast him in the head, and you don't know what kind of jokes he's going to make. I think that's what Hot Rod is too, minus the head chopping and gun toting.
Yeah, right.
But it's like they take the character and then it's just like, well, what if we let this goofy character just do whatever the heck they want, basically. So,
And I think as you say that too, it makes me think of what makes the banter and the jokes so good. And I mean, just because we're talking about both those movies and like why I like them is, I guess, to retract. It's not necessarily that concepts are overdone and that the focus is on the concept, but bad comedies focus on just the concept. So for example, you have a movie like Daddy's Home with Wahlberg and Will Ferrell, and it's like, you know, this comedy where the stepdad and the dad meet and they have to become friends to save the kids. And it's you, depending on where you take it, it could be really, really funny. And to me, when I watched it, I was expecting like, all right, it's going to be like Will Ferrell extreme shenanigans. And there was.
Wait, it was Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg?
And Mark Wahlberg.
Oh,
so
man.
Mark Wahlberg is the biological dad of these kids. And
I feel
Will
like
Ferrell,
that could be good. Because
It
they were in
wasn't-
that one movie together, the cop one.
Yeah, the other
That
guys.
was hilarious.
But so to pin those movies directly against each other, the other guys was so funny because you have, it's like, oh, it's a buddy cop comedy.
Yep.
But then again, what they excelled at is they played up those characteristics to the max. Like they maxed out, like, you know, Mark Wahlberg's character is like this angry cop who's just so frustrated with the world.
bitter and-
Exactly.
Yep.
And they just played it up super strong. And then you have like the douchey cops in the department who are pranking them to the extreme of like,
Yeah.
you know, the desk pop joke where it wasn't like, hey, Sarge, I filled out this report. And he's like, Dick Bubkiss? Who's Dick Bubkiss? And he's like, well, that was the guy that they said I should go talk to. He's like, he doesn't exist. Oh, they punked me. You know, it wasn't jokes like that where it was shallow. It was like, hey, Terry, have you ever done a desk pop? Like, no, what's that? Well, you take your gun out and you fire it in the ceiling. It's like something that it's so dumb.
Yeah.
And it's like, he doesn't get fired. He doesn't. And so they break the rules, the norms and like what we would expect. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you fire the guy because he's an idiot. But it's just like, Terry, you dumb person. You don't do a desk pop. I like the whole like Tuna and the Lion thing. So there's moments like that where they just, that scene epitomizes playing up those two characters' extremes. And you have Terry, who is, and I might be mixing up their names, Will Ferrell's character is played up of like, I'm just super analytical and super logical and super well-grounded in all my thoughts to the point where I'm walking through this stupid scenario with you. And then Mark Wahlberg, who's like, I was trying to tell you I'm going to kill you, you know, and just like the disconnect. Whereas I think with like Daddy's Home, you have Mark Wahlberg's character who again is like the edgy dad. And he's like, yeah, I ride a motorcycle and wear a leather jacket. What about it? And then Will Ferrell's character who's like, oh, I go to work and I work a 9 to 5 and stuff like that. And yeah, they have clashes, but the clashes never felt like they were funny because it's like, oh, it's kind of slapsticky. Excuse me. But
Well, and I think like a lot of comedies are just depend on slapstick humor. Like the type of humor that you laugh to in the moment, you're like, that was funny. But like it's not timeless humor. I feel like movies like Deadpool and Hot Rod and even like other Chris Farley films, like a lot of stuff like that is timeless. Like it's just always going to be funny because it's focused on the character, not on like situational humor that's like only funny because some dude got hit in the head with a board or something.
right.
Which
and
is funny, like,
yeah.
but it's not timeless humor.
And I think to add to that too, though, there were some incredibly memorable moments in Hot Rod that were incredibly slapstick. So one
absolutely,
of them,
yeah.
like when he asks if there's a yoga or if there's a karate move to make a grown man crap his pants, she's like, I don't think you're ready for it, Rod. He's like, I'm ready, and she like does it on him. Total slapstick, like she's just smacking him or whatever. And it's like, one, it's a ridiculous scenario of just like, hey, is there a way you could punch my stomach so that I poop? It's like, when you think about it, that's that whole scene. Yeah. But then it exists and it happens. Or when he's like walking across the street after telling them like, I'm not going back. And he's like walking with his cart full of alcohol and the van comes and just like sidelines him like hard. And I think it's Dave driving. He's like, oh man, did y'all see that? That was crazy. You know, so there's moments like that where it's just bananas. And I think the same thing happened with Deadpool. Like they did another scene like with the baby hand, but then now it's like baby legs. And like that whole scene was just spectacular because
of you, now I know what a grown man with a baby penis looks like.
It was so, or like when he gets up and he starts walking and TJ Miller's like, my God, he's doing it. He's doing it. Look at him go. And so things like that where it's total slapstick, but it's so ridiculous. It's just hysterical because nothing like that would ever happen.
But I feel like it's almost a tier above. Like, if it wasn't the character, it would be funny. But it's like a tier above that, even because of the whole situation and because of who the character Deadpool is, and it like basically mounts the humor on top of each other, and it's like almost like layers of humor that like build, and then all of a sudden you hear the entire theater just laughing at this moment. Like, you don't hear that a lot. You don't hear the entire theater just laughing. So
definitely.
Yeah.
So I mean, we could go on, but I think I've just been thinking a lot about comedies and in my hope to kind of write stuff that's more comedic, and just seeing how the stuff that seems to really land and be timeless is so ingrained in, like, just like you were saying, like layers of humor, and how if you really stopped and looked at that moment, there's the more elements you can pull into it of why it's funny, the better it is and the more timeless it is. So like,
because you got baby legs, it's funny because it's a grown man with baby legs. But it's also funny because the same thing happened in the first movie.
Exactly.
It's also funny because Deadpool's referencing something that happened in the first movie. It's also funny because it's Deadpool's character, and it's like it just keeps adding on and
exactly.
on. Like,
and then you have like
sort through all this.
Yeah, and then you have like Cable who comes in, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this!" And then he's like wearing a Hawaiian shirt, and he's just like sitting around. And he's like, and then the other humor of him crossing his legs, and all of a sudden he's like playing with his toes and stuff like that, and so. And then everyone comes in, they're like, "Oh my gosh, what is this?" And and then they all pull out guns, and it was funny. It just was funny.
Yeah.
I hope that more comedies do stuff like that, because I just feel like they just don't, and I don't get it. Like I don't understand it. Like, jokes are funny, but I feel like there's an over reliance on writing like the one-liner quip, and it's like, oh, if we just have this one-liner in there, then it's a hit. Or if they have that one thing that everybody references, then it's a hit. But I think that's exactly why so many, I can't think of a legitimate comedy that's come out in maybe the last like 5 years that have been like, that was fantastic. I'd watch that a couple times just so I can remember all the funny parts in it.
Yeah, I agree.
But
I feel like it's interesting thinking about the movie now, because there wasn't really like a bad guy.
No,
because both of the quote unquote bad guys basically like joined the X-Force at the end,
right?
Or like they're whatever the team. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be called the X-Force because they're planning a movie for it. But, it's interesting thinking. I was just like processing while you were talking. And I was like, there was
like
definitely. Cable was definitely like marketed as the bad guy, but he wasn't really the bad guy either. Like, he had a very, very good reason for doing what he was trying to do. Which was interesting because it was parallel to what Deadpool was trying to do, except for Cable was just a kid rather than a Russian mobster.
Right.
And Deadpool just killed the guy right away without anything.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting how like Deadpool had to basically become the hero to protect some crazy kid from another dude from the future trying to kill him.
Right.
And then they ended up teaming up. And I liked Cable's little change of heart at the end there. He used his last time thing to go through. So
yeah, and as you point that out too, I think, and I could see though that's why critics didn't like it.
Yeah.
Time
travel gets messy. I was like, this is gonna create a lot of.
They're gonna.
But
be
then
even
then they took that and they just went. Ryan Reynolds just went with it, and
they
like, he's going back in time to rewrite the timeline.
And then
he killed the original
exactly.
Deadpool, and
well, and then he like, even so, I loved how the first one too, because there was part of me that I was like, dang, like they killed off Vanessa, that's heavy, and like how they set it up. But then at the end, of course, like, of course they're gonna fix it. And then they come back and he kills the guy and he's like, let's go! And then he like zips back in time. And then they have the gall to go through 2 other superhero movies and just like completely.
I loved that. He's like, sorry, just fixing the timeline. Did you see the Deadpool like 10 years in the making trailer or whatever?
No.
Because the first time that Deadpool actually appeared was Ryan Reynolds
in the Wolverine,
which was 2008.
Yeah.
And so like he made a funny video of him like explaining like, oh, it's the 10-year anniversary of the Deadpool franchise, and like he went through like the whole history basically. That's like hilarious. First time I appeared, like blah blah blah, and he goes through and there's like basically nothing, and he's like, so yeah, that's the Deadpool universe. So basically like making fun of Marvel's thing. So
that's hilarious. And then the Green Lantern thing was even better.
He's like, oh, my time to shine. Blood on the page. You're like, oh no.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Canada. So it was, yeah, I don't know what critics could have pointed to specifically that,
yeah.
Because I mean, usually there's like a couple things that pop out where you're like, yeah, I could see some people being like this, but was it too intense for you? Like, was it too bloody? Was it too irreverent? Like that too, like all the points where like when they're in the taxi, and then again, the layers of humor. They're in the taxi and he, Cable's like, can you shut the music off? And he's like, hold on. You just don't want the music on because it's not white American country music or whatever. He's like, you are a racist. And then at the end of the movie, when Cable's
like, could you just find it in your heart to
just like love people of other color? It's like, because there was a great man that once said, it's not the color of your skin, but it's the character of your heart. And he's like, I'm not a racist. And so just like stuff like that it's like, yeah. I don't know. So I'm going to do some homework, and I'm going to come back next week with some details on why people didn't like it specifically. Yeah. But
it was good. I'd highly recommend it, unless you're thin-skinned.
Unless you're thin-skinned, squeamish, or don't like a lot of curse words.
Cussing. This one didn't have as much like explicit like sexual scenes
I actually
so.
There
was a lot of jokes, a lot of very inappropriate jokes, but
which I mean,
I thought it played
like
into the character.
Thing, but I in a weird way, like I appreciated that because that was one of the parts of the first one was like I don't like when they have to throw something like that in when it's like it doesn't benefit or detract. And I mean, they kind of used it narratively in the other one, but I was fine that they kind of skipped over that. But
yeah.
Man, dude, when he peeled around the corner in Professor X's wheelchair, I was like, "Is nothing sacred? This is this movie."
Yeah.
This
and when they were like talking really loudly, and the X-Men were in the other room, and they slammed
the
door. I'm like,
door.
"What? That was all." I think that was actually all the actors.
Yeah,
too, like from the First Class.
Yeah,
so
that was so good.
Yeah.
It's like, because whenever I'm here, there's no one else here but you.
But a bunch of B-class X-Men,
and then they're like. We're just gonna sneak out of here.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
I really want them to make a movie where Deadpool actually meets like the X-Men, and it's more of a connected universe thing. But I feel like they won't just because of how
he would just trash it, and they would just the way they've created this whole thing to be is he would just trash it.
I want more X-Men references and stuff.
Yeah,
even if they could get like Beast to walk in to the place or something, be like, "Oh, are you using this week? I thought it was our turn to use it or something."
Right.
But yeah, I thought it was a great movie. I would see it again.
Big fan.
I probably will see it again. I'll probably buy it when it comes out on Blu-ray.
What do you think? If you had to say this one or the first one is better, which would you say?
I think as of now, having just seen it, I think I like this one more. I just feel like the humor was way more ramped up, and like because of all of the popularity with the Marvel universe and DC right now, like there's just so many referential jokes of like him ripping and making fun of like the Cable thing, like, and three. At what point do people get sick of people with robotic arms?
Yeah, right.
So I don't know. I just
Winter Soldier.
Yeah. So I feel like this one just had a lot of like, I don't know. I just feel like this one I was laughing like the whole movie. I was just laughing, and I could hear the whole theater just constantly laughing.
Yeah.
So I think this one was funnier.
Definitely.
And I liked the narrative, and I liked how they mess with my brain with all of the promotion. Like I thought I was gonna be watching an entirely different movie than the movie I saw. So.
Yeah. And when you think about it, I hope that movies do that more of just playing up that you can totally release stuff and release trailers that build into the story, but maybe use that to your advantage depending on what kind of movie you're marketing to kind of screw with people a little bit.
Well, I think a movie like Deadpool has the benefit of the doubt because we basically assume Deadpool's pulling a fast one on us because it's Deadpool.
Yeah.
If they do that with a different movie like Star Wars or something, people will be like, this was dumb. Like, why'd you do that to me? Unless it ends up being better than what we were expecting. But I could see them just shafting us and being like, well, that was stupid. That was not the movie I would pay to watch.
Right.
And
there's part of me that I don't understand why, for commercial purposes, and again, this is me just diving. I don't want to go in too much of a diatribe on this, but from a marketing side, like people are constantly complaining, and rightfully so, because I'm one of the people with them. I hate watching trailers anymore because there's huge stuff that they spoil. Like I remember with Thor Ragnarok, it was a huge spoiler that Hulk was in it. Like their whole intention was to have that be the big surprise of who the fighter is. And so like there's part of me that what would have that been like for audiences if you didn't know that
secret, yeah.
Right. And so, I can't think of another example that's done something recently like that, because like I said, I've just kind of
I think it kind of depends too, because like when I watched that trailer, I got hyped. I got more hyped for the movie that I knew Hulk was in it.
Exactly.
I was like, oh, let's go Space Hulk, yeah.
And you're totally right. Like it's a double. Not that one way is better than the other, but I think it's just a question.
The things they decide to spoil nowadays in movies.
Yes.
And some movies you're like, I just saw the entire movie in that trailer.
Exactly.
Or at least everything I need to see.
And there's part of me that wants them to even like maybe shoot some narrative stuff that is a precursor to everything. And like maybe have some content that
almost like a prequel.
Exactly. No,
like
but if you think about it,
prequel.
or like, even like a minute 30 prequel that has nothing to do with the characters, or maybe it's just, going into who some of these people are. And then when you see the movie, you're like, oh, I saw this in the trailer. Like, this is why he's doing this. Versus what I feel like is happening now is they take the movie and they take chunks of it. Some of it are chunks that they never end up using. And then it's like, why'd you even show me this then in a way? Because then it's like, oh, well, we didn't use it, so it's not a spoiler. It's like, yeah, so then why are you showing me it? Because it's like, this has no bearing on... Yeah, this isn't even part of the movie. So, because I just think of what would be more fun for studios to do, and I feel like, again, this is very much for specific projects and not for every movie to start doing this. But I think with Deadpool, like you were explaining with the whole X-Force thing of, yeah, we're moving into the X-Force phase and, all this stuff. We're like, all right, cool. We're going to see like Terry Crews and Shatterstar and all these folks go ham. And the way they built it up is it's like, yeah, here they go. And they all die in 20 seconds. But then you have, again, with it being a comedy, the meta joke of like, he was totally pulling a fast one when he said that this was going to be the focus of the movie. And here they're gone. Yeah. So if directors and stuff like that did more narrative building that transcended the movie itself, and maybe if
created hype in different ways other than showing us just what
literally what's in the movie, or footage that got cut from the movie that isn't going to make any difference to everything going on. So
definitely,
I've rambled quite enough, and we're at 1:20. So
nice. Yeah, I think it was a good movie. You should definitely watch it if you haven't seen it yet.
If you liked the first one, if you, like we said, warning, if you're...
It's heavily dependent on the fact that you appreciate Deadpool as a character.
Yes.
If you don't appreciate crude humor and
bloody
people getting
guts,
sliced, like if you think superheroes aren't supposed to kill people, don't watch this movie.
Don't see this movie. You're gonna be very disappointed.
But if you like the first one and you like a good comedy, I think you'll like this one.
Definitely. Totes agree.
So yeah.
So we'll close it out.
Yeah.
So you can check us out on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. I am officially caught up. Every single
there one day it was like
yeah, it was. I was like one after the other. I was like, I'm gonna set these 3 up. They're gonna upload overnight. Then I'm gonna get these done and pump these out. And bam, we are caught up. So if you want to see our little intro clips that we do for each of the episodes, some of them are us just goofing around. Some of them are actually pop culture references from shows and movies and other stuff that we love. So you can find those on YouTube. And once again, you can check us out on Twitter at Josh K Creations. Also, I am Phil Sorensen and Pop Culture Punks. And it's just that. I was almost said Pop Culture Punks podcast. But, so it's those 3 on Twitter. And those will be listed in the description. Yeah. So thanks for tuning in. Feel free to reach out to us and connect, offer a topic, offer a question. We'd love to talk about it in the next episode. We're dying for content. We don't know what to do anymore.
Yeah, we're out of. Yeah, we got nothing. Zach's gone. We got nothing.
I don't know what we're gonna do anymore.
Frack.
It's just gonna be me.
Also, I realized we never brought up the splash of diabetes joke.
Oh, that was gonna be. That'll be the title. That's gonna be the title.
They'll finally get the reference right at the end.
Exactly.
Of the movie.
I'm telling you, meta. It'll
splash
be meta.
Of diabetes.
You're like, what is that?
If you want to know what we're talking about, check out the movie.
Go see Deadpool 2. So thanks for tuning in. Catch you folks later. Keep moshing.
Peace out.
want job security, but I've been dreaming about packing it all up. Cause the war in me just won't relent till there's nothing left but dust. So what do you do when the walls start closing in? And everyone you love tells you it's all just in your head. And I wanna burn out in a brilliant burning blaze. Don't wanna be stifled by the dry rot or the haze. I'm not giving up, I just don't have the time to waste all my days rewriting all these lies. I'm not giving up, I just don't have the time to spend another moment living someone else's life. The path that we all choose only takes us one way. Either we're honest with ourselves or we're lost in the parade. And each and every one of us will make the same mistakes. But it's in these moments of defeat that we can break ourselves free. And I wanna burn out in a brilliant burning blaze. Don't wanna be stifled by the dry rot or the haze. I'm not giving up, I just don't have the time to waste all my days rewriting all these lies. I'm not giving up, I just don't have the time to spend another moment living someone else's life. In defense of honesty, in defense of honesty, in defense of honesty, in defense of honesty. I'm gonna burn out in a brilliant burning blaze. No, I will not be stifled by the dry rot or the haze. I'm not giving up, I just don't have the time to waste all my days rewriting all these lies. I'm not giving up, I just don't have the time to spend another moment living someone else's life. I'm not giving up, I just don't have the